In 1918, during the darkest days of World War I, the White House lawn became home to an unusual flock of Americans. Sheep. Yes, real, woolly, bleating sheep grazed freely on the perfectly manicured grounds of the president's residence. It sounds bizarre, almost comical, but behind this odd image was a serious message and a surprisingly effective wartime campaign. President Woodrow Wilson, faced with the immense pressures of leading a nation at war, looked for ways, big and small, to encourage national sacrifice, resourcefulness, and public spirit. And one of the most visible symbols of that came from a surprisingly humble place, the White House grass. With so many young men called into military service, and so many laborers redirected toward wartime industries, even the staff who maintained the White House grounds were needed elsewhere. Instead of hiring new hands, Wilson and First Lady Edith Wilson embraced a creative solution that would save money, conserve fuel, and send a powerful symbolic message. They brought in a flock of sheep. The idea wasn't entirely new, livestock had been kept on presidential property before, but this time, it was done with intent. These sheep were not just lawnmowers. They were part of a larger message, that every American, no matter their station, should do their part. The flock took over the south lawn, nibbling down the grass and fertilizing it in the process. No fuel, no wages, no maintenance costs. Just sheep doing what sheep do best. The most famous of the flock was a ram named Old Ike, gruff, stubborn, and, according to White House staff, fond of chewing tobacco. He was known to snort but anyone who got too close, especially photographers. Old Ike quickly became a celebrity in his own right, appearing in newspapers and inspiring political cartoons. But the sheep weren't just a quirky photo op. They served a financial and patriotic purpose as well. Each year, the sheep were sheared, and their wool, precious during wartime shortages, was collected and auctioned off to the highest bidder in each U.S. state. It was a brilliant fundraising idea, combining novelty with a sense of civic pride. The response was overwhelming. Across the country, people competed for the chance to purchase White House wool. The auctions became events, drawing attention in both local and national media. Buyers paid far above market price, not for the value of the wool, but for what it represented. All the proceeds went to the American Red Cross, which was playing a vital role in providing medical aid and supplies to soldiers on the front lines. In total, the wool from Wilson's flock raised nearly $52,000, a staggering amount for the time. Adjusted for inflation, that's more than $1 million today. Every dollar supported the war effort. Every fleece was a symbol of unity. And every grazing sheep on the White House lawn reminded Americans that even the smallest contribution could be meaningful. The symbolism didn't stop there. Wilson's sheep highlighted an ideal of self-reliance. They suggested that even the leader of the free world was cutting back, conserving, and looking for ways to do more with less. That message echoed in households across the country. People planted victory gardens, collected scrap metal, rationed food, and found creative ways to support the troops, because they saw that if the president could make sacrifices, they could too. In a time before television or the internet, images of sheep lounging near the White House columns became iconic. Photos and illustrations circulated widely, and people talked about the strange but powerful gesture coming from Washington. What began as a practical decision quickly became one of the most effective PR campaigns of the war. The sheep remained on the lawn until the war ended. And while their grazing days are long over, their story still stands as a quirky yet poignant example of how even the most unexpected actions can have deep impact. Sometimes, patriotism isn't about grand speeches or powerful weapons. Sometimes, it's about a flock of sheep, a patch of grass, and a country willing to come together, one woolly step at a time. And so, as the 1920s approached and the echoes of war faded into history, the sheep were quietly retired from their noble duty on the White House lawn. Old Ike, the famously tobacco-chewing ram, had become something of a celebrity, mentioned in newspapers from coast to coast, celebrated in children's books, and even rumored to have been sent a medal by a veterans organization, though this may have been more folklore than fact. But even after the sheep were gone, the memory of that era lingered. For a time, the idea of doing more with less, of blending symbolism with practicality, continued to inspire. Victory gardens, scrap metal drives, and community sewing circles flourished well into the 1940s, especially during World War II. The seeds of citizen participation in national causes had been planted in part by Wilson's sheep, and they had taken root. In fact, during FDR's presidency, the idea was even floated to bring animals back to the White House lawn as part of the New Deal's effort to reconnect Americans with the land. It didn't happen, but the conversation itself proved that the story of the sheep still had currency in the American imagination. Meanwhile, the wool from that 1918 auction was cherished by its buyers. Families framed certificates of ownership. Some turned the yarn into heirlooms, scarves, mittens, and sweaters that were passed down with pride, each stitch telling a story of shared sacrifice and national unity. And in the years that followed, historians began to look at Wilson's sheep not as a quaint anecdote, but as a masterclass in subtle wartime leadership. Because at its heart, this wasn't just about trimming grass. It was about shaping perception. In a time when many Americans felt helpless or disconnected from the war effort, Wilson's decision to graze sheep on the lawn offered a quiet message: you matter. Your choices matter. And together, we're capable of great things, even if they begin in small, woolly ways. Today, though the White House lawns are once again manicured by machines, the legacy of those sheep lives on, in stories told in classrooms, documentaries, and history podcasts. You might walk past the gates of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and never know that, once upon a time, a flock of humble sheep helped win a war, not with weapons or speeches, but with wool and quiet determination.